Hello and welcome to JamsHams Judgement, my weekly review podcast in which I review anything and everything. This week I'll be reviewing Carnival Row, the Amazon series that came out, I want to say last week, but I don't know. I just saw it appear on my Amazon and I thought, hey, that's got Orlando Bloom in it for some reason. I'm going to watch that. So I am going to, well, if you don't know what is happening, this is the gist of it. Every week I review a thing, could be anything. We've reviewed anything and everything, including hams, jams, Dungeons and Dragons, movies, TV shows, everything. So, yeah, I also keep it as interactive as possible, so if you have any thoughts, questions, please do say them in chat. But yeah, as always, I've got some notes that I'm going to work my way through, a vague little structure that I'm going to try and stick to. So I'm going to go through the main characters, the main plot line, the side plot line I'm going to just like briefly skim over. Then I'm going to say about sequel territory. It leaves on a bit of a cliffhanger, several cliffhangers really. Then I'm gonna go through a few of the different areas of it, like the effects, costume, story, writing, acting, and then I'll give it an overall JamsHams Judgement at the end and rate it out of 10 hams. Okay, so what is Carnival Row? Basically, Carnival Row is... I had no idea going into it. I just... See, if you saw my Going Live post, you saw what the poster is. Basically, it's Orlando Bloom in a bowler hat, next to some sort of fairy, and then behind him is some sort of monster, Cthulhu-esque kind of monster. So I was like, what is this? What is this? Why is Orlando Bloom in a bowler hat, and what is he doing with a fairy? So I just started watching this without even looking into it at all, which I think might have been a mistake because on Amazon there are a few character prologues which I didn't watch, and I think that gave you a bit more backstory, especially in terms of the locations and stuff. I found myself being a bit confused with the different locations and like where the fairies were from and where all the different races were from. There were long names, and I was like, I have no idea what you were talking about. But I think I should have watched the like prelude prologue to the characters before jumping in. So if you do want to jump in, I recommend watching the prologues. But in general, the setting is, imagine a Victorian London. I'm gonna say London because everyone like, oh blimey, governor talks like this. So it's pretty much gonna be London, and for some reason the fairies are Irish or whatever. I don't know. I'm gonna get into accents later. There are some dodgy accents for sure. But yeah, mythical Victorian Britain is how I've described it. So I say mythical because obviously fairies exists. Yeah, Splash knows his accents. To be honest, I'd say you may have done a better job than some of the people in this. Orlando Bloom even wasn't very on point, I don't feel, with his Londoner's accent. So yeah, so what's in the universe? So there's fairies, there's pucks, which are basically, imagine Mr. Tumnus from Chronicles of Narnia. Man torso, horns here, which sort of like go over the face a bit, and then big goat legs. So humans, pucks, fairies, fae, or pixies, they're called a lot of things. There are centaurs, kobolds, werewolves were in it for a bit. And I think that's all of the creatures you saw, but wow, there's like demons and magic stuff. But yeah, so imagine that So imagine all your like Dungeons and Dragons creatures and whatnot, but in Victorian London with all the like bowler hats, bobbies with big rubber batons and stuff. It's an odd setting for sure. So yeah, that's the setting of it, just to give it a bit of context. Right, so I think this is the best way to go through it. So I'm going to go through the main characters, or who I think are the main characters at least, then the main plot, and hopefully this will make sense. I sort of rushed through this, and it's a bit fresh on the brain, and I might, miss a few things. Haven't really had time to think about it that much. So, main character, played by Orlando Bloom, who, as we know, has a very nice penis, as we have previously discussed, is playing Rycroft Philostrate, aka Philo, for short. So he is an inspector, hence the bowler hat and the get-up. He's an inspector with the Burg Constabulary. So the Burg is the main city in which this takes place, essentially mythical London. Bustling streets, jam-packed buildings, dirty, lots of miscreants running about. There's like your posh areas with all your fancy palaces and stuff, and then there's your run-down area. The run-down area is called Carnival Row, hence the name. So that's where all the miscreants are, all the brothels. There's a fairy brothel, which is a main set piece. So yeah, so that's Berg. So he's part of the police force in Berg, and he's also a war veteran, and starts off with him investigating a couple of murders, but we'll get onto that. Second main character is Vignette Stonemoss, which is Cara Delevingne's character. Also, the main character on the poster as well. She's a fairy. She's the fairy one, and she has a very weird and complicated relationship with Philo, Orlando Bloom. It's all very... They have a past. There's a flashback episode which explores that more. And then it's it gets all complicated, and I don't know. I won't really go into that because I don't... It was fine. It was a good bit of the story, but it's not the main thing. It was just a will they, won't they sort of thing, or have they? Maybe they did. Oh, they did, but now will they, won't they again? There was a lot of that. And then there are two main families. So two main part of the higher class families. So there's the Breakspears. There's some of these names are really weird. Absalom Breakspear. He is the Chancellor of the Burg. So he's the man in charge of... he's basically the Prime Minister. And then he's got his son Jonah. Jonah plays more of a part later on in the story, but early on he gets kidnapped. I'll explain that later. And then his wife, Piety. So Piety Breakspear. She is obsessed with this prophecy. I don't know. She saw a witch or something. Oh, there are witches and shit as well. I forgot to mention that. Actually, I think the witches might be fairies. Yeah, class them in with fairies. Who cares? So she's obsessed with this prophecy that her son will be a greater man than the Chancellor. So she is just really insanely obsessed with this, and will do everything in her power to ensure that her son Jonah is going to be the best thing in the world. And she's oh, you're going to be king one day, even though it's not going to happen, because that's not how monarchies work. You can't just decide you are king. And then there's their rival family, so another high up family called the Longerbanes. The main characters in that are Sophie Longerbane, who is the daughter of the Chancellor's rival in the political center. And her father, whose name I cannot remember because he dies pretty early on. But basically, he's a big old racist. A lot of these characters are big old racists. That's like the main theme of this. Everybody, like, this is not a peaceful society. Everyone, most of the humans hate the Fae and all the Pucks, and they don't like anyone who's not human, basically. Especially, the police force is very corrupt. Philo is not corrupt though. He's a good boy. He's a good old boy. Is our Orlando Bloom. But yeah, there's a lot of people in Parliament who are calling for, you know, these creatures to be evicted out of their city, and no one wants them there. And Longerbane is like spearheading that movement. So, I mean, there are lots of characters. I think that's the main characters. These are the main characters you need to know in order to understand the story. Spoilers, by the way, because I'm going to be going through like the main plot. Not all of the plots. There are plenty of twists and turns and side characters I haven't mentioned, but the main plot, it's basically a murder mystery. So I'm gonna basically tell you who the murderer was. So if you don't want to know, cover your ears. Basically, we don't do a spoiler-free thing here, unfortunately. Maybe I should. But I think I'd struggle describing this without trying to spoil anything. Right, so we start off with Philo investigating the murders of Fae, and the gruesome murders, I might add. They get smashed with a hammer once. He attacks once every 3 weeks, and he's nicknamed Unseelie Jack. So it's basically mythical Jack the Ripper, essentially. So Philo is investigating those murders, tracks him down, maybe at the end of episode 2 or something. So this is just the starter crime. I thought it was going to be the main crime, but it's just the starter crime. Who knew? Turns out Unseelie Jack was a sailor, which is why he comes in every 3 weeks. Like I said, everyone's racist, and he just wants to bash Fae. He just wants to bash some fairies, and that he did. But yeah, he gets chased by Philo up on top of a roof, and before he kills himself, rather than be turned in, I guess, he said the reason he did it was that the Fae have brought some sort of monster to the city. So that's apparently why he was attacking all of these fairies. And turns out, big spoiler, turns out there was a monster. Turns out there was a big boy monster, which is kind of spoiled because there is the big boy monster on the poster. Okay, so then the big boy monster starts to reveal himself, and big murders start to happen. Not just your straightforward hammer bashings. No. The big boy murders. We're talking gruesome things being ripped out of people. Like, for a show about fairies and stuff, this has some gore and some gruesome bits. It doesn't actually start off with Orlando Bloom. It starts off following Vignette, running through the forest, running away from this other group of people called the Pact, which I think are somehow even more racist than everyone else. And they were gunning down fairies left and right. You saw fairies get headshot. Like, the first shot you see of this thing is fairies getting headshot and their brains blown out. So it sort of sets the tone. I came in expecting a nice little, like, mystery about fairies in Victorian London or some shit, and the first thing I saw was them all getting their heads blown off, I was like, hell yeah, I'm into this. I'm into this now. So yeah, the big murders start to happen. So they find the body of an old woman, an old fairy, who had been like gouged down the chest ripped open, guts flying everywhere, dragged into the sewer, blood everywhere. Hello, Carius. How much did you miss? A little bit. I've just started describing the main plot. You missed the character descriptions, so you might be a bit confused. So yeah, basically organs everywhere, and the liver missing. Now that is an important thing. The liver was missing. So that was the first murder, and then you see two more murders. So the first the first person to be murdered was an old Fey singer, on not the beach, but like the dock side. Yes, Carius, detective thing. It's set in like Victorian London, if Victorian London had fairies and fauns and centaurs and shit like that, and monsters, basically. Right. Yeah, first one was an old face singer. Then the second person to be murdered was Philo's old headmaster at his like orphanage thing. Excuse me. And then the third person to be murdered is the coroner / doctor of the morgue worker. I know there's a word. I cannot. It's on the tip of my tongue for the profession. But the guy who works at the morgue, the doctor in the morgue, he's the last person to get murdered. Well, not the last person to get murdered, but of the main three. So yeah. Now I don't know if you see the connection, but they are. Well, Philo basically finds out that the connection between all of these three murders, they were all murdered the same way, gouged down the chest, ripped apart, livers taken. Again, livers taken, important. But Philo finds out, spookily, that Philo himself is the connection between all these three people. So, I mean, obviously I'm skipping through this. He didn't just, like, instantly find this out. There's a lot of detective work that Philo had to do. So, the connection with the first one, the old Fey singer. Now, here's the twist. Here's the big twist. The old Fey singer was Philo's mother. So, dun dun dun, turns out that our boy Orlando Bloom is half fairy. But he'd no have wings, you say. Well, it turns out that's his connection to the Doctor. See, when he was younger, when he was born with wings, because everyone in this town is incredibly racist and would probably murder the child for being half human, half Fey, they had his wings chopped off by the Doctor, the third person that was murdered. And the connection to the middle one, Philo's old headmaster, was keeping the secret of him being half Fey from everyone. So the connection was that all three of these people knew that Philo was half fairy. Now, who, you may ask, would care that deeply that Philo was half fairy when he didn't even know for a lot of his life? Because all it left was some scars on his back where his wings used to be. Well, at first, Philo assumed that the only person who'd care that much would be his father. Because obviously, if they were high up in society, they would not want a half-Fey bastard as their heir. Because that's bad news. That's bad news. That's career suicide right there. Because, like I said, everyone's incredibly racist. So yeah, that is the connection between all three of those people, and he thinks it's the father. Also the liver thing. Okay, I'll explain the liver thing. So whoever Philo consults this Fey witch or Fey priestess kind of lady, magic lady. And basically she said that if you cut the liver in the right way, you can use it to sort of, I don't know, I don't really get how, I mean obviously it didn't work because it's not real, but how this worked. So apparently if you cut the liver in the right way, it sort of tells you all about that person. So it tells you, it's basically, instead of like reading their mind, you sort of read their liver, if that makes more sense. I think that's the best way to describe it. So yeah, that's why all the livers were being taken. Also worth noting that these murders, these were not done by like a normal person. This was like definitely done by a monster, and you see like vaguely the monster throughout this, like people getting smashed against walls and ripped apart and stuff, claw marks everywhere, hoof marks on the floor and everything. So yeah, this is the work of a monster who's stealing livers to read their minds in a way. So they figure out that they're getting the livers to try and find out who Philo is, because all of these people know the truth about Philo. So yeah. But around this point, Philo's world sort of crumbles around him, and everyone starts realizing he tells the wrong people, and everyone starts realizing that he is half Fey. And of course, everyone's very racist, especially the police force, as mentioned. So as soon as that comes out, all of the police force immediately turn on him. His boss turns on him. He gets the shit kicked out of him. Gets called names that I will not repeat here, because there's some vulgar language in this show, as well as all the gore. This is not a kid's show. Oh my goodness. If you were sat there with your kids and they were like, oh, daddy, fairy, let's watch the fairy program, and you clicked it, and then you get people's brains blasted out as the first thing you saw, I guarantee you someone has done that. I guarantee that's happened, and that is hilarious. So yeah, everyone turns on him. He loses his job because they're racist. And then, to top it all off, he gets framed and jailed for all the murders, because as far as everyone else knows, he is the only connection between all three of these people, and he had sort of been keeping it on the down low, so people wouldn't find out. So yeah, it doesn't look good for him. It really looks like he's the one that's been doing the murders. So he assumes it's his father, everyone else assumes it's him. But, now here's another twisty-turny bit. Turns out that it's not his dad, and that his father is actually, drumroll please, Absalom Breakspear, the Chancellor of the Burg. The Prime Minister, basically, is his father. Basically, years ago, the Chancellor had an affair with this Fey singer, and out popped Philo. Philo, even. 9 months later, or however long fairies are pregnant for. But it was kept a secret, clipped wings, he didn't know about it very much. He thought it might have happened, but he wasn't sure. So yeah, that's the big twist. So the Chancellor tries to help out Philo out of his situation, to find the actual killer and who's been doing this. And they're getting very closer. They're getting very, very, very close to finding who the real killer is. But at this point, you're like, well, if it wasn't the father, who the fuck did it? And wait, what? I mean, in general, I'm gonna say this now. This is a good murder mystery, if nothing else. It keeps you guessing. It definitely kept me guessing. I didn't know I honestly did. I half expected it, but I also half didn't. It was weird. I'll explain the ending in a bit. Okay. So they also find out that the murders were being performed by this monster, and this monster is called a Dark Asher. And a Dark Asher is basically an amalgamation of dead bits of anything. They're all stitched together, and magic is performed on it. It's raised from the dead, and this monster can only die if the creator dies. So you can like chop off this thing's head. This happens at one point. He chops off its head, and he just picks the head back up and shoves it back on, and it all like slimes back together again. Pretty grim. So basically, someone has taken bits and pieces of beasties and giants and griffins and centaurs and all sorts, and made this Cthulhu-esque monstrosity. If you've ever played Hearthstone, there's a card called a Nightmare Amalgam, which is basically a squish together of every type of beast. It's pretty much that, but scarier. So someone's made one of these invincible monsters and is having that do their bidding, and that's why everyone is getting murdered so gruesomely. Okay, I'm gonna tell you. Is he like a big goop of body parts? It's more it's more like a Frankenstein. It's more like a, say he has like a big like talon, like a big old eagle arm, and he has like tentacles, but he also has like a beak thing in the tentacles and some teeth in it, like maybe sort of horse-like. Yeah, it's more of a stitch together rather than a gloop. I don't think a gloop would have been as scary. Yeah, and he has like big old muscular hoofed legs and all sorts. Very like demon-esque, and like a Frankenstein demon, basically. Probably a good way to describe it. So I mean, I know I've skipped over a bunch of the story, but I'm gonna tell you who's behind it, and hopefully it'll make sense to you. I don't know if you probably need other bits and bobs in the story. Obviously, it takes 8 episodes to get there, so there's a lot of twisty turnies, winding paths, and storylines I haven't gone into, episodes I haven't gone into, you know. But the main story, turns out it was actually Piety. So the Chancellor's wife was behind it all, the one that's obsessed with the prophecy of her son. And the prophecy of her son is actually why she did it. So basically, she got sent a blackmail letter from someone saying, I know that your husband has had an affair, and somewhere out there is a half-fae son born by your husband. Now, to her, this was basically saying, oh god, now the prophecy cannot come true because there are now 2 sons and not 1 son. I must find and kill this other son in order to keep my son to become king, or whatever. That she's crazy. She's an insane lady. So an insane lady who wholeheartedly believes the prophecy and killed a lot of people to try and you know, keep it that way, I guess. So at the end, they track her down. Orlando Bloom fights the big monster, chops off its head, sticks its head back on. He's losing, but then in comes Vignette from behind, stabs Piety through the back of the neck, out through the mouth. Very, very satisfying. She falls to the ground with a very satisfying, like a plop. Why did I even try and make the noise? Like a big old like wet thud on the ground. It was a satisfying noise. And then the monster also dies because it dies when the creator dies. And that is the main story wrapped up. Yeah. Sound effects. Maybe I should have practiced that. Sounds like some 18+ Harry Potter. Yeah, kind of. Less magic than Harry Potter. It's more like witchcrafty, like, oh, let me brew a potion, and it's sort of like that witchcraft rather than like big old laser wands and whatever. But who knows for future seasons, maybe. Sorry you had to hear that, cat. I'm sorry. So yeah, it was piety all along, and that was the motive. So that is the main plot. There's also a side plot, which I'll say. There's another family called the Spurnrose family, another like high society, highfalutin family, which is a brother and sister, and they are struggling with money. The sister then strikes a deal with a puck who is their new neighbor, and like everyone in the neighborhood is like, how the hell did this goat man get into this neighborhood? What the fuck is going on? So basically this puck needs help integrating himself into the high society because, as I've said, everyone is incredibly racist. So he says, okay, you guys help me get into high society and I will just give you money because I am loaded. And she's like, okay. Very reluctant at first, but then they end up banging. They end up banging hard. Oh, they end up banging hard. And my god, when they banged, this puck, I thought, because, you know, imagine someone, you know what I say when I say goat legs, like it goes like up this way and then sort of back that way and curves around? Like a goat if it was on its hind legs. It's very like weird looking. So it's basically, I'm guessing how they filmed it is like just a guy on stilts basically. And like they walk really awkwardly. So I did not expect him to be as fucking buff as he was. My god, he took his shirt off and the definition on those abs was astounding. I couldn't tell you what the actor was, but my goodness, I was not expecting that buff goat boy. Holy shit. Anyway, then they bang, and then I cried. I cried. I cried. Tears of joy, tears of happiness, tears of soy. I cried. They were rippling. It was like, oh, I can't describe it. You have to watch it yourself. Hello, Leslie, by the way. I guess she was okay too when she, you know, got naked. That was fine. That was fine too, I guess. So yeah, they bang and then they go off on a boat and maybe they are happy families ever after, but maybe not because cliffhangers. So yeah, that's the main side plot. The Spurnrose family. It kind of ties in with the main plot at one point, like the police visit their house once, but they never really mesh, so they're very like separate stories. So sequel territory. How does it end? It's confirmed there is a season 2 happening, which I'm very happy about. I really liked this. So it ends with, in the last few episodes, there's a group of like devil worshipping pucks who were like wandering around chanting about like the devil rising and showing his face, and he sort of like, they like were whipping their backs, blood flying everywhere, prostrating themselves and like flagellating, I mean. Yeah, it's all very Satan-y. So this group is basically like a religious terrorist group, and they attempt to assassinate the Chancellor. So one of them stabs him a bunch of times, and then Piety also finishes off her husband in the end, so she kills the Chancellor. And then Jonah becomes the... Oh yeah, that's the other thing for the sequel. So Jonah, the Chancellor's son, takes over as the Chancellor, and he works together with Sophie, which was the racist Parliament member's daughter. And they're going to start to work together to sort of rebuild... I don't know, they're up to something. They're scheming. They're both a bit weird. Especially Sophie is very, very scheming. She's got a lot of plans. It was revealed at the end that she was actually the one that sent Piety the blackmail note and informed her of Philo's existence. So she's the one that set this whole thing in motion, and I think in season 2 she's going to be up to some shenanigans. That's for sure. So Puck and the Spun Rose girl leave on the boat. That's still up in the air. They're followed by her brother, who is not very happy about it. And this group of devil worshippers is on the rise. They've already tried to assassinate the Chancellor. And in response, the city has basically said, okay, we're incredibly racist, so that means that all mythical creatures are evil, and therefore we will segregate the lot of them. So at the end of the series, all non-humans are pushed into Carnival Row and basically segregated by barbed wire. They're not allowed any interaction with humans and stuff. And then in the because one of the themes here is how Philo is torn between two worlds. He's torn between the fairies and he's torn between the humans, because obviously he's half human, half fairy. And at the end, he makes the decision and he follows Vignette into Carnival Row to get segregated, even though he didn't have to. He made a self-sacrifice. He grew as a character. He made Vignette very happy because he's finally chosen a path rather than trying to toe the line in between. It was very, very sweet. Well, it was very sweet, but also someone got blasted in the head as well at the end, which wasn't so sweet. So there was a corpse in the background when this happened, which wasn't very sweet, but okay. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I try to keep the summaries brief, but brief and still make sense. I don't think I do a very good job, honestly. I'm sorry, I need to do better. Maybe if I had more time. But my god, I hope it made sense. I only went over the main bits. And please, if you want to watch this, I wholly recommend it. But yeah, the last section I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the different aspects of the show and sort of try and review each and every one in a bit more detail. Hello, Zapadon. So the like I said, the main theme, you may have picked up on it, you may have not. You definitely picked up on it. Racism. Racism is a very, very heavy-handed theme. So overall, it has a good message. It really shows you how racism is really, really dumb and just does not make any sense whatsoever. So the message is good, but my god, did they have to make everyone that ridiculously racist? Holy shit. Everyone 99% of the people in this series are dicks. They're such dicks for no reason whatsoever. To the point where they just beat people up on the street for having horns and whip them, and it's some of it's hard to watch because you're like, oh god, so I know there are people like that in real life, and it's kind of scary. But it was the whole city was made of those people, especially some people on the police force. My god, Jesus Christ! And there was all that. Ugh. So yeah, it was a bit heavy-handed with the sheer amount of racism, violent racism that there was in the universe. But hey, that's it. It's all world building, and that's what the world's like. And there were wars and stuff contributing to this, and they're all refugees from the war and not just space. Blah 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 blah. There's a lot to unpack there, but it might get a bit too real, if you know what I mean. What I found interesting though, this was revealed in the last 3 episodes, but what I found interesting that there was in this universe normal racism. So racism based on the color of your skin and where you're from and stuff. So there's yeah, I think there was, I can't remember who said it. I think there was a black character who basically said, oh, there was a time not that long ago where people with my color skin were segregated and preyed upon, basically everything I've just said, but for humans with different skin colors. And then when all these creatures moved in, the focus sort of shifted. It sort of people just like forgot that they hated people with certain skin colors, and they're like, hang on a minute, you're not the problem, you're the problem. And it's sort of they sort of shifted their gaze as they got distracted, basically. So as one racism got fixed, well, it didn't get fixed, they basically replaced one racism with another racism in this world. And I thought that was just an interesting thing, like little bit of lore to add in, that there was normal racism as well, and now there's proper, like I guess it's speciesism. But yeah, at least other racism is gone, I guess. Small victories. Yeah, there was a whole speech where they're like, hey, well, you know, like last week when you said that guy was bad for being black, well, can you not see that is exactly what you're doing to this guy with horns? And they're like, no, shut up, you're wrong. There's a lot of like British Parliament. Yes, I agree. Yes, death to fairy folk. Yes. There's a lot of that. A lot of old fat Victorian men yelling and jiggling, I guess. So yeah, racism, the main theme, I feel. So, in terms of the actual making of the show, the effects, I don't think I saw a bad effect. So the last Amazon show I watched, The Boys, which I also did a judgment on, I mentioned that some of the effects were a bit wonky. I think this did like a real good job. There was a lot of practical stuff in here, especially like the gore and stuff. They've obviously made like fake bodies with like fake organs and a lot of fake blood. They've made a lot of stuff. I think they made all the wings as well. So basically, when a fairy's not flying, the wings sort of like fold down, like down their back, and it sort of has like a, I don't know, sort of a drape to it. It's like it's clearly they're real, and you can like see that they're real. And I read a little tidbit. Apparently, the wings were pretty much like 50-50. Real versus CGI, because obviously when they're flying and then it turns into CGI, like all the flying and stuff was obviously done with wires and stuff, and you can tell because it actually looks more real rather than just someone on a computer like dragging and dropping a like a person up in the sky, you know what I mean? So yeah, a lot of it was practical, and it makes it look really good, basically. Also, they didn't go too wild with the sets, like the set pieces. It's all mostly contained in this old city. I think it was filmed in the Czech Republic, so it's like they obviously like used a bunch of like old buildings and stuff. Everything looks really good. No, not minimal CGI. Because it's all set in this city. There's in the flashback episode they go to the fairy homeland, which it looks like fantastical. Think like when like how they went to New Zealand for Lord of the Rings, because it looked like very epic. Like they've obviously found a real life epic looking mountainous location, and they're like, okay, this can be where the Fae live. So it still looks magical, it still looks fantastical, but at the same time it also looks real rather than someone's just like made it on a computer, which is nice. And because they don't have many different locations, they can really concentrate on the ones they do have, which I think shows. The costumes were cool as well. Everything was very convincing. Yeah, that was all good. Well, that thanks past me. I said in my notes, I go, yeah, the costumes are really good, and then I wrote, I would like to maybe see more of the, and then I didn't finish it. So who knows? Apparently I wanted to see more of something, but I can't for the life of me remember what I wrote. So hey, who knows? Maybe it'll come back to me. The writing. No, I'm not including the story in the writing. I'm including like writing as in how the people spoke and how it was all written. I didn't like it at some points. It kind of sounded like people were just trying to say, you know, sometimes you get people that just try and use big words for the sake of sounding smart. It was a lot of that. It was just like people beating around the bush, saying lots of big words, and it's like, oh, just say basic things. God damn. I found there was a lot of that. There was also a bit exposition-y at times. Like there was a lot of people explaining lots of things to everyone. Obviously, there's the show don't tell thing that you should probably adhere to, but it's like not too much. I'm nitpicking, definitely. But yeah, a lot of people using big words when they really didn't need to use big words, and it's like, come on, you could cut this runtime down a few minutes if you just get to the point already. You know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah, other than that, no complaints here. Pretty damn good. Story-wise, story was good. I know I just butchered it, but the story was good. Lots of twists and turns that I didn't see coming. I had no idea about the whole half fairy thing. Like I said, didn't know anything going into this, which I thought was really cool how they revealed it. It was sort of a gradual reveal. Like you saw the scars on his back at the very start, and they're like, "Oh shit, how'd you get them?" And he's like, don't worry about it. Got him in the war. Yeah, don't forget about it." So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like you could have figured it out from the start, but I sure didn't. I sure didn't. I like things like that when it's like the clues are there, and it's just whether you piece them together or not. Story. I liked all the themes, even though, like I said, a bit heavy-handed at times. Maybe they could have dialed down the racism just a little bit. It kept you guessing as to who the killer was as well. So Piety, who it turned out the big killer was, there was like a subplot where she kidnapped her own son and sort of framed her husband's rival for it to get him killed. They sort of covered her tracks in the story by making her do another crime. Like her doing the other crime sort of distracted you enough to the point where you're like, oh well, she can't possibly be doing this crime because she's doing this crime. If you know what I mean. Like, but in hindsight, I should have thought, hang on, this woman is clearly insane. Maybe it's her that's been doing the murders. But yeah, it kept you guessing, and it's a well written story. And I know I've just spoiled it for you, but if I hadn't have spoiled it for you, I don't think you would have guessed all of the different twists and turns that happen along the way. Acting good. I mean, the only people I knew out of the cast were Orlando Bloom and Cara Delevingne. I think they spent a lot of budget on Orlando Bloom, maybe. But even though I didn't recognize a lot of the actors, they were all pretty solid. Accents sometimes were a bit wonky. Obviously, there was two very strong accents. There were either like London ruffian accents or strong fairy Irish accents. So it's like you gotta get people to commit to that, or like a highfalutin posh, oh yes, tea and crumpets. There was a lot of that sort of thing. But it's like, it's hard to do that one wrong, at least. Orlando Bloom's accent was a bit wonky at times. I don't know whether it's because I'm British. I found this with The Boys as well, because Carl Urban does a British accent in that, or tries to. It's better than his British accent. They're very similar voices, actually. It's like a very like gruff, Danny Dyer-esque, like, oh, what's all this then? Oh, you bloody wanker, sort of thing. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best accent, I must say. So I don't think it was Orlando Bloom's best work, but still good. It really showed as well. If you're doing an accent, it is really hard to then try and like shout and really emote in that accent. And there's one point, he sort of kept the same like level throughout, but there was one point where he shouted in the accent. I was like, ooh, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. I think he yelled at someone to fuck off or something. I was like, ooh, that sounds very wonky. Maybe you should have done another take on that. I don't know, but yeah, some of it was wonky. Yeah, oh yeah, I've written here that maybe he was held back by the accent. I think that is very true. I think he was held back in a lot of his acting because he had to do the accent, so he sort of had to keep it like level to keep the accent going. So there was a lot of like, he had a very like twitchy face because he had to do a lot of acting in his face rather than his voice, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too much into it. Cara Delevingne did very well. I didn't touch on her story much because she's got a whole backstory and she is a main character. They probably share equal screen time. But yeah, she also has a whole story. But I thought I'd just cover the murdery story, which I think is like the main overarching one. But yeah, she did very well. Apparently this is her first starring TV role, and I think she did possibly better than Orlando Bloom. So that's pretty good. Her first starring TV role, and I think she did better than the fully fledged movie star. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying anyone's like bad. Everyone was good. But yeah, pretty impressive, I'd say. So yeah, Carnival Row. Time for my overall judgment, I think. Pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. It's, like I said, it was not what I was not what I thought it was going to be at all. Just seeing a fairy on the cover, I didn't even know what to expect, but it was a lot darker than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, it's really good. Now, this popped into my head earlier. Has anyone seen the Netflix original movie, Bright? Bright is basically the exact same premise as this, but like future? Or no, it's like modern day. Bright was basically, imagine the modern day, but there were also orcs and monsters. The one with Will Smith, yeah. So this is basically the exact same premise as that, but set in Victorian times. And my god, this is so much better than Bright. Bright had mixed reviews at best. I watched it and I was like, I can see what you're trying to do, but my god, that was not great. But this was Bright done right. And I think that should be their tagline. This was really good. So, like, if you want sort of like an alternate historical thing with, or an alternate reality thing with monsters, yeah, go Carnival Row, not Bright. Yeah, your instinct was correct, Devoys. Not great. Not great. Wouldn't recommend it. I would, however, wholly recommend Carnival Row. Real good. So, overall, yeah, that's the thing, Leslie. I also kinda liked Bright. but I really liked this. So I think this definitely did it better in the whole, like, what if this but monsters sort of thing. Maybe I just like fairies more than orcs. Maybe this says more about me than it does about the film. And yeah, again, my opinion, just thought I'd mention it. Overall judgment, I'm going to give Carnival Row a solid 8 out of 10 hams. I really liked it. Confirmed season 2 happening. I'm pumped. Left me wanting more. And yeah, I mean, I'm a grown-up boy, and I think I can make pretty good decisions, and I would recommend this to everyone. I really liked it. But definitely not for kids. If you get approached by a kid, I don't know why you'd get approached by a kid. I mean, if you any parents watching, I mean, if they say, "Oh, mummy, daddy, can we watch the fairy program?" Don't let them watch the fairy program. No Bloom Dong, no Bloom Dong. A few Bloom sex scenes, a few Orlando Bloom sex scenes. Orlando Bloom did get a bit shredded for this. He's got his pecs working, so pretty good there. He also got his booty out. You saw his booty at one point. That was nice. I mean, there's a lot of other nudity. There's some cool fairy sex. I said this to Kat yesterday when I was explaining it. So in the fairy brothel, at one point they were having sex, and then like the woman, the fairy was on top and sort of like straddled the man and sort of started flying and lifted the man up while they were having sex. So he was like floating in the air. It was trippy. And also fairies like wings light up when they orgasm or something. There's a lot of adult themes, and there's a lot of things I've skipped over, okay? But yeah, real good, Carnival Row, would recommend. So yeah, now is the point in the podcast where I'd say, are there any questions, any thoughts? Has anyone seen it, or at least has anyone heard of this? I hadn't really heard of this before I watched it. I saw a few posts about it, but other than that, I mean, it is very recent, and I did swiftly binge watch it, so, you know, I know not many people have watched it yet. Never heard of it. Fair. Yeah, it's Amazon Prime. So Amazon Prime original series. And then also, if you're getting Amazon Prime, I'm just gonna go ahead and recommend The Boys again, because The Boys was damn good as well. Amazon have been knocking it out of the park with these new TV shows, must say. But yeah, I really liked it. I know I've said that about 50 times, and I really didn't do it justice with my description, but I'd say have a look, for sure. So, if there's not anything else from anyone, I reckon we'll just about wrap things up. So any last thoughts or questions? Anything that I didn't quite explain right, or anything like that? If not, I will wrap things up for the YouTube recording. I say that as a no. Okay, let's wrap up. Okay, so this has been JamsHams Judgement, my weekly review podcast where I review anything and everything. I'm always on the lookout for suggestions, so if you have any suggestions on what I could review, and bear in mind I could review anything, literally anything, whack them in the Discord where I've got the suggestion box. Send me a message on any of my social medias listed over there, or down below in the description. This is the general gist of it. If you, for some reason, you are still here and haven't known what's going on, I review a thing, try and keep it as interactive as possible. I've been JamsHams. Thank you for watching. I will hopefully see you next week when I will be reviewing Who knows? Why don't you tell me what I'm reviewing? Maybe I will review you, Devoys, next week. Full 3-hour Devoys special, where I go in depth into Devoys' insanity. Tune in next week. Bye bye.